Good morning, all. Welcome to Jodi Day
It's
once
Jodi
again.
Day! And we need to do some changes to the intro, especially, and the overlays, because I still have, you're still
Yeah,
MLSN here, but you're not anymore.
I
You are
am
the.
now God of Law. Yes, we need to get the God of Law going. I have a new brand. For some reason, I just decided to change it up a
Yeah,
bit. But yeah, we
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah. I heard that you decided to change things up a bit.
well, let's see if I can upload it here. Here we go. All right. As an overlay.
Cool.
Just to show people my new branding. There we go. MLS God of Law.
And it looks like you.
Yeah, it does. I see. Wait, hang on. There we go. See, there's a resemblance. It looks like me.
But do you have horns? I thought that was my skill.
Oh no, it's a riff on the Viking,
Hmm.
helmet. But that's
And this,
definitely my body. That's
yeah,
a photograph of me, actually.
yeah, and this thing
Yeah.
is poking my nose.
Yeah, see, genitals, I got it. Good afternoon, genitals. It does look
Mm,
like me.
yeah, and I saw Karate Cat Mom. Know very little of this case. Yeah, now
Okay,
we have done this since May of last year.
it's almost a year. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
it's
been covering
almost a
this.
year. So if you find this, oh, this is interesting, go to Dave's new channel for rewatch of the episodes once he gets to re-uploading them.
Yeah, I'm
So
gonna re-upload them on my new channel here probably this weekend. I'm gonna try to get them all. I'm making sure I have them all lined up, and then I'll start re-uploading them.
mm,
But essentially, what we have, I'll give you the backstory. So Jodi Arias is on trial for the unaliving, stabby, then shooty of her boyfriend. She's kind of crazy, a little stalkerish, and as we've seen in the last few weeks from the experts, she's kind of a girlfriend chameleon. She'll sort of adopt the habits and the interests of anyone that she dates. So the one that she unalived was a Mormon, and so she converted to Mormonism. And so there was a whole bunch of stuff with that because Mormons tend to be, no sex until marriage. So there was a lot of sex coming into this conversation. She also alleged that Travis was abusive towards her, although there's not much evidence other than her statements. But
mm,
what's most sort of like interesting about this case is that she first declared that she wasn't there. It wasn't me. I wasn't anywhere around there. And then she left a camera behind with fairly revealing photographs on it the day before he went unalived. And she said, "Oh, that is my vagina. I was there." And but ninjas broke in and did it. And then right before trial, she changed it to self-defense, claiming that he was abusive. But because of all of her stories, her photographs were admitted. The fact that she actually took pictures of herself accidentally doing the unaliving as well were admitted. But
mm.
during the Law and Crime or Court TV feed, when they were supposed to cut the video and leave the audio, they did the reverse. So
Yeah,
all of Jodi Arias was broadcast to the world.
yeah,
But she's essentially narcissistic. She's the precursor to Amber Heard
yeah.
with the disassociate.
Histrionic
Yeah, histrionic. Yeah,
personality disorder, no, a borderline personality disorder.
yeah.
Those were both at the time and after she has been re-diagnosed, I assume. Yeah, we have different. We have the reveal of Jodi Arias. That is day 6, part 2, I think. And then you have the Yes in Face episode where where the yeah, if was it a prosecutor or the defense attorney who made those remarks about the Jis in Face?
Um, that
I don't.
was. That was both of them talking about that.
Both of them.
Both of them.
During Jodi's testimony.
Yeah. She felt abused by Travis because he would in her face, and then the prosecutor repeated it. So there's all kinds of smixy talk in the trial, and it's absolutely amazing. We are currently on the defense's rebuttal expert because he called,
No. This is the prosecutor's rebuttal.
I'm sorry, the state's rebuttal expert, because the defense had called two experts saying that she was essentially an abused partner.
Battered woman syndrome.
Battered woman syndrome. Words are violence kind of thing. And so they're combating it with a very articulate young lady as an expert to say basically, no, she suffers from all the things that Amber Heard will later be diagnosed as suffering from as well. But welcome. FMM 2.0 says Flux Ray couldn't really redirect, but she did order us to come watch. Morning. All right. Well, glad you're here. I don't know why she couldn't redirect. I think I have it set up so that she can redirect. But I know she was having technical. Oh, she's streaming from her Xbox, so maybe that was the issue.
Yeah, and I do. Yeah, I don't know. But and let's just say that, Dave needs watch hours. So if you would be so inclined that you leave me super chats and then you go over to Dave and watch his channel.
Yeah, I can't accept super chats right now.
Oh no!
So, yeah,
they better.
No. You got to give them all to Nick.
I mean, it's a bit infuriating to win that way, but a win is a win.
What's not like for the last several?
And give me,
me all the. It's okay. Our statements have been the same for the last 6 months. Give me all the likes and give him all the super chats. That's not changing.
Yeah,
you just give me the watch hours too.
Yeah, but it's also infuriating because now I'm finally overtaking the Making Law Simple Network subscribers, but maybe from not the reason I would expect.
Hey Flux, welcome. Flux, get over to my new channel, Flux.
Yeah.
Go subscribe over there and tell your minions. You have a lot of influence.
Yeah. Dave's stream is pinned on the top of my chat.
Yes.
Oh, you can't even make... Yeah, exactly. That's why you're not green anymore over at Dave's, because it's a new channel, sadly.
It's a brand new channel. I have 700 and something subs, 719. Which we have plenty of subs. We need the watch hours to get monetized. Then you can all be green again. Yeah. So I don't know what my hours are that I actually need. But
to be on the safe side, you all know what to do.
Yes.
Okay, but this is Jodi Arias trial with Dr. Janeen DeMarte. It is the defense trying to cross-examine her by challenging her credentials. And Dr. DeMarte is good. She's really good. They have tried everything. They are throwing spaghetti at the wall in hopes that anything they do will stick. But so far, they haven't been successful, in my opinion. So, let's see here. Sound on.
I was like, oh, we have a guest joining us. I didn't realize she hadn't shared the screen yet.
There. All right. And everybody. Oh, thank you, FMM 2.0, $45 super chat. I took the lead, Dave. Did you see? I'm taking the lead.
I noticed. I noticed. There's a Cash App. Wait, there's a Cash App.
What Cash App? Oh, all right. But
it's gonna be fun. This is like doing it all over again, but somewhat knowing what you're doing. So this is good.
Yeah, and remember to subscribe to Vielhammer Media. Now,
Yes.
he has the subscriber, he has the watch hours. He needs to do his own content to actually be monetized. But watch hours are still good. Subscribers are still good. We not just need him to. I mean, we might try to get him. What about?
It was weird that they said he couldn't monetize because it wasn't his own content, but he's obviously producing something unique.
Yeah,
because he's editing all the audio and fixing it all.
Yeah.
So,
and he's
it's
cutting
weird.
things out, and he's adding his things. And I mean, if this was a fair use case, yeah, it's fair use because he is actually taking away a lot of stupid things and adding in himself and information.
I don't. It wasn't a fair use thing. It was essentially he didn't produce enough of his own content.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, if this was a fair use case, he would probably win it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he's adding a bunch of his own things. He's editing things. He's audio remastering.
He's doing nothing that Law and Crime doesn't do.
Exactly. And Law and Crime are deeply monetized, and they use nowadays a pool feed to stream out to their audience. Yeah. Okay, so Ghostry, there's the link, but Dave doesn't have any moderators, so Dave has to post it himself.
What do you mean? I have moderators.
Do you have moderators?
I don't know if they're in there. I see Salvador in there. I'm going to make Flux a mod. There's Flux.
Yeah.
I'm adding Flux as a mod.
Yeah. Here's Vielhammer Media. I'm a mod. Feral is there. Yeah. All right.
Oh, Feral's there. Oh, okay. Feral's there. What link? All
of them.
Yeah, all of the links. Feral's in Vegas right now. Why are you not cooling your heels over at the Pai Gao table? Why are you in my chat, Feral?
How does one get the name Vielhammer? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I never asked him his name. We should do a Lego stream with him. I want to interview him.
And I have a happy Jodi Day. Thank you so much.
I'm taking away your wrench, Flux. She doesn't want it.
Where did the $5 one? I can't see my $5 super chat anymore. Oh, there it is. It was unstarred for some reason. Yeah, I'm taking a huge lead. But everybody go give Dave the thumbs up and stuff like that.
I'm gonna put a banner up of my Cash App just scrolling at the bottom.
You are? Oh yeah, you have access. Yeah, you have. Cash Apps doesn't count.
Oh really? Okay.
All right, but day 49, Dr. Janeen DeMarte, cross-examination by the defense, and yeah, let's go.
Jury, the defendant and all counsel.
Defendant.
You may continue.
Good morning, Dr. DeMarte. All right, yesterday we talked a little bit about some of your work that you did with sexually violent persons, right?
That's correct.
And also the psychosexual risk assessments that you did?
I don't believe we spoke about those.
You did those?
I have done those.
Okay. And so, and we were talking about dealing with people who have sexual issues, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you are doing these evaluations with these people, it is generally post-arrest, isn't it?
Yes.
And so they've already been in trouble with the law.
That's correct.
But you would agree that before they get arrested, these types of people will do things to evade getting arrested, right?
That's correct.
And you're familiar with, based on this experience, you're familiar with sexual deviancy, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us what sexual addiction is?
Sexual addiction or sexual deviancy?
Sexual addiction.
Sexual addiction is the addiction to sexual behavior.
All right. And what about pedophilia? Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. Pedophilia is defined in the DSM as an interest to prepubescent children, a sexual interest.
Sexual interest. Okay. All right. I want to go back to your CV to talk about your conference presentations. Do you need a copy of it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 624.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so with regard to your conference presentations, according to your CV, is it true that the most recent presentation you had was in 2007?
Yes,
And that's prior to being licensed, right?
yes,
And that type of presentation was a poster presentation, right?
yes.
Meaning, what is a poster presentation?
It's presenting research data at a conference.
Okay, and that research data is presented on a poster, right?
It's in an exhibit
Okay.
kind of form, yes.
All
And
right.
there's a bunch that it's usually in a large area, and there's a bunch of researchers that are presenting their data there
Okay, and so people can walk around and view what's on these exhibits, right?
and discuss the data, yes.
All right, but it's not actually standing up in front of your peers and actually presenting in a lecture type format, right?
Not in a lecture format.
And prior to this one, you had another poster presentation in 2006,
Yes,
and that had to do with empathy and disregard for others in children exposed to intimate partner violence. Is that right?
that's correct.
And was that part of some of your studies with regard to your thesis, master's thesis?
Yes,
So based on your studies with your master's, you are aware that children are affected when there's domestic violence in the home, right?
yes, that's correct.
And you're aware that when children are exposed to domestic violence, it can cause them problems in their future.
Yes, that's correct.
And in fact, you're aware then that the studies show that men more often tend to turn into batterers if they're going to turn into something, right?
Can you rephrase that?
That men, so in other words, a boy as a child who's exposed to domestic violence in the home, studies show that more often that person is going to turn into a batterer versus a victim.
That's been found to one of the factors that contribute to the development of battering behavior.
Okay, and so also you were aware of the research that women or a girl who's a child in a home that has violence in it, more often research shows will turn into a victim rather than a batterer.
That's inaccurate. There's research that shows that they could go either way. Again, that's just one factor that contributes to any kind of perpetrating behavior.
So you disagree then, so that there is no research having to do with a woman most likely turning into.
So a woman who is battered as a child is more likely to turn into a victim of abuse later. Is that what she's trying to say? I don't know. It just didn't make any sense. It's just they're talking in general terms, right? This is what a lot of what like the prosecutors tend to do, right? Let's just talk in all these general terms that really don't apply to the defendant specifically, and then we'll just assume it applies. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
If she's going to turn into anything, becoming a victim versus a batterer.
I agree. There's research that suggests that that kind of exposure to domestic violence can lead to that kind of behavior,
Okay,
either
that's what
victim
I'm
or
asking.
perpetrator.
I think she did. She's not
Finish
talking.
your response.
Yes.
And you're aware that the research shows that the greater the violence is in the home, the more effect it has on the child, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but
And prior to that, you did another poster presentation in 2005, right?
here's the thing. She's actually, it seems like she's asking about Dr. DeMarte's research. And DeMarte, this is one of these Twitter, you should, it's obvious you don't understand what this author wrote in this book. And the author replies, I wrote the fucking book.
Yeah, exactly. So Moni is clarifying here. She says that no, what she's saying is if you grew up in a home of violence, then you're more likely to become a victim. Okay, that's essentially what I was thinking she was saying. So
Yeah,
we're on the same page using different words.
Yeah, but does this apply to Jodi Arias? I mean, I know there are allegations against her father, but
yeah, it's from Jodi herself. Nobody else is saying that she grew up in an abusive household.
No, and in her letters, she glorifies her family.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't even think of this. Yeah, I forgot we don't have the bowling ball emojis.
Well, I have them on my end, but
I have all the emojis saved, and so as second I'm monetized, the emojis will go back up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And before that, it looks like you have 4 other presentations that are earlier than 2005.
Yes.
And 3 of those were poster presentations. And you're reviewing your CV, right?
I am. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and one of those was a paper presentation.
Yes.
And in these 4, you were not listed as the lead presenter in any of them, right?
That's correct.
And so if you haven't had any conference presentations since 2007, that would mean that you haven't had any conference presentations since you were licensed, right?
Right. Most of my work is as a clinician. I don't present as in conferences. That's not something that I do as part of my career.
All right. Well, today and yesterday, you're testifying not as a clinician, right? You're being used as a forensic expert.
That's a clinician.
Well, you're not treating anybody here, right?
A clinician does evaluations and treatment.
Okay. But you're being hired to testify about an evaluation, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Let's talk about publications. Can you tell us what peer review is?
Yes, it's a strenuous process of once a research article has been written based on research that's been conducted by the person, it gets sent out to other individuals in the field to ensure that it has good quality of work.
Okay. And
Yes, T. Underwood. The father issue came out after he passed away. So,
Yep.
Yeah, he can't dispute it. And
Well, but the mother's around, and
Yeah, but,
siblings are around, and nobody's
yeah.
saying like, yeah, she was abused as a child. What mother did say was that Jodi was a bit odd as a child and a bit
Yeah.
of a handful as a child. But that's
yeah, and in police interviews, Jodi's father said she started lying at age 14 and more or less never stopped.
Yep. Yeah.
you have two publications listed in your CV, right?
That's correct.
One from 2004 and one from 2006.
That's correct.
And both of those, you are not the lead author, right?
That's correct.
And both of these are prior to becoming or getting your license, right?
Yes.
And part of your education was doing your master's thesis we just talked about, right?
Correct.
That was not peer reviewed or published, right?
Correct.
And part of getting your doctorate degree was writing a dissertation, yes?
Correct.
And that your dissertation was not peer reviewed or published.
Right. I didn't pursue that.
So it wasn't.
Correct.
Yeah, but I mean,
All right.
I understand the implication, but this is that's academia. I mean,
Well, she's young. Like I said,
Mm.
from the moment
Mm.
this witness took the stand,
Mm.
she's extremely young. She doesn't have a ton of experience. I'm wondering how she even got qualified as an expert, but
Mm.
she was very good on the stand. So
very
the
good.
only thing that the defense can do is discredit her because of her lack of experience, lack of accreditation,
Mm.
and things like that. So I get what she's trying to do. I just don't like the way she's doing it. I don't think it's going to help.
Yeah.
And currently you are in your own practice, is that right?
Yes.
And that's after you left Bayless Behavioral Health?
Correct.
What was the reason for leaving Bayless?
Wanted to start a private practice.
Okay, so you were with Bayless with your license for approximately 2 years before you started your private practice, right?
Correct.
And when you started Bayless in, you were licensed in August of 2010, right?
July of 2010.
July of 2010. And a year later, after your license, that's when you began evaluating Miss Arias, right?
Yes, July of 2011.
Okay, so a year after you got your license is when you began this evaluation.
Correct.
Now, right now, with regard to what you do in your own practice, you have, you do civil evaluations, civil and criminal forensic evaluations?
In addition to other work.
Okay, but that's part of what you do, right?
Correct.
And you conduct therapy?
Correct.
You do psych testing
Correct.
on adults and children?
Primarily adults.
Primarily,
Mhm.
okay. And you do this testing, you use assessment tools, right?
Yes.
And what type of tests are you familiar with now that you use in your practice, besides what we talked about yesterday?
New tests?
Any other testing tools that you use in your practice now that we didn't talk about yesterday?
I listed a number of them yesterday. There's several that I didn't list yesterday just because I asked you if you wanted me to continue. You said no.
So
I
what
use
are
the
those?
same kinds of tests, some new tests potentially in my new practice. I use what's called the R bands,
Okay, what's that for?
neuropsychological damage.
Okay, and anything else new?
New? No.
Okay. All right. Now do you have any other doctors working for you?
I have 2 psychologists that work under my contract
Is that a contract with the county,
with the state
the state? What kind of contract is that?
to do disability evaluations.
Okay, and so those are licensed psychologists, right?
That's correct.
And so those licensed psychologists, they do some of the contract work for disability then,
Under my contract.
under your contract? And do you also do that too?
Yes.
All right. As part of having your own practice, you have an advertisement, don't you?
Advertisement?
Yes, in Psychology Today?
That's a website.
It's a website, but it's not, it's a website, yes, but you also, in addition to the Psychology Today website, you also have your own website
My
talking
private
about your
website.
practice, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so the website Psychology Today it's an advertisement, isn't it? Talking about what you do?
Yes.
Do you have to pay to post on this?
I have not paid.
Do you have to?
I haven't paid thus far.
Okay, have they requested it and you just didn't? Or?
No.
Okay, you just haven't needed to.
Right. I haven't needed to pay.
All right. And when you post on the Psychology Today, you create
Oh my
what
God,
you
I
want them
was
to say
muted.
about you, right?
I write it.
You
Okay. And they are talking about her posting things on Psychology Today. It sounds like she has. It sounds like a website where you can post your own content, like a
Yeah.
side
So
blog
that's
or
her
something.
published articles. She like posted them herself.
Yeah.
So there's like a number of qualifications that you need to go through. That's not exhaustive. You don't have to have all of them. You can have only one and it's sufficient. But they go over things such as education, years of experience in the particular area, whether or not you've had any articles published, whether or not you teach the material, whether or not your stuff has been peer reviewed. Have you been given any awards? Have you testified in the past? Have you, things like that. And you don't have to have, like I said, all of them. You don't have to have any of them, really. I mean, you have to have at least something, but it's not like a balancing scale. You don't have to have them all.
Yeah.
Things aren't ranked higher than others. She's just trying to poke holes in this.
Yeah, but all it does is, for me, it shows the opposite, because they are trying to say lack of experience, and I see this is a woman who excels, that at her age have done this much. So
Yeah.
For me, it really doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's kind of counter to what I think she's trying to do. I just don't like her style. That's my biggest thing.
right. So what we see on the advertisement in Psychology Today is what you've written.
Yes.
And you give a summary, basically you give a summary of what you do and what your beliefs are with regard to your practice, right?
Correct.
And in here you say that you offer a free consultation.
That's part of the website that comes with Psychology Today. That's verbiage that they use.
Oh, so you didn't write that part.
Right. I didn't write that part.
Okay, but you do offer a free consultation, right?
If a patient is interested in therapy and they call me, yes.
Okay. And they talk about the average cost per session, $130 to $200.
Yes.
Is that per hour?
For therapy,
I don't know. It just says $130 to $200.
those are the ranges that they also put up there.
So that's not your
That's per hour.
range.
Right. Well, that's the range I fall into. They had categories to choose from.
Okay. And so if you wanted to charge more, then you couldn't?
I charge the same across the board for between
just an
differences between forensic
advertising
and non-forensic
portal.
work. So this is
Just an aggregate for they have the same thing for attorneys, like legal leads and things like that. You can pay to post and say, hey, I'm a law firm, I'm an attorney specializing in this particular area of law, and these are my hourly rates. It's just that's all it is. It's not like contractually binding or anything.
No.
This is nonsense.
non-forensic.
Right. And so non-forensic work, then what do you charge?
For therapy,
Yes.
$125.
Okay. And it talks about how it has whether or not you have a sliding scale, and the answer is no. Did you write that part?
It was a box to check.
Okay, so you checked the box no.
Right.
So in other words, with a sliding scale, that would mean if somebody couldn't afford the $125 an hour and didn't have insurance, they would have to look elsewhere.
Right.
Okay.
She's so
And you
mean.
also accept insurance, right?
Yes,
And on this website, there's a list of the different insurance companies that you will accept.
that's correct.
And isn't it true that if somebody walks in with insurance, you're contracted with that insurance company to accept less per hour than what you would get if somebody just walks in and paid you cash?
We're required to follow the contracted rate.
Right, and the contracted rate is less than what you would get if somebody walked in paying cash.
Right.
Not necessarily.
Do you know approximately how much it is, or does it vary?
It varies.
Okay, but it's less than $125 an
It
hour.
is. For some, not for all.
Okay, but it's less than what you would charge privately.
For some,
So sometimes with insurance, you're going to get paid more than what you would get if they walked in the door paying cash?
not more, equivalent.
Oh, equivalent, okay. And I want to contrast that then with your forensic service, because this advertisement, like you told us, is just with regard to your non-forensic services, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe I said anything about forensics in there. It's possible.
Okay, well, when we're talking about money and things like that.
Oh,
Is
that's
that
right.
right? Okay.
Yeah. As Amy, oh my God, that's standard in the medical field. Yeah, but the jury doesn't know it. And that is why the defense are trying to poke holes holes.
Any and all holes. All
Yeah.
of Jodi's holes. They're trying to poke all of Jodi's holes.
Yeah, they try to poke this shrink as Travis poked Jodi, but it doesn't work.
Yes. Oh,
The forensic
forcefully
service-
from the back door right after a baptism. That's what they're trying to do.
That means that you are hired to evaluate somebody and you're getting paid by either a prosecutor or a defense attorney or a plaintiff's attorney, something like that, right?
Or the court.
Or the court, right?
Correct.
Okay. And in forensic work, you charge $300 an hour for testimony, right?
Testimony.
And $250 an hour for non-testimony?
Right.
And is there another charge?
Well, 300 also for pretrial interviews.
Okay. So $300 an hour. So
here
yesterday
comes
when you're
the hourly
testifying
rate.
and then today you're making $300 an hour, right?
That's correct.
And you'd agree that's significantly more than somebody who walks in to get therapy from you.
That's correct.
So
your opinion
doing-
is just because they paid you.
Yeah, but she does. I mean, she does work for prosecution, for defense, for courts. So apparently, she's credible enough.
Yeah.
I wonder if the question from the state in this case will be: have you ever not been used? Have you ever had a difference of opinion and not being used by a defense or a prosecutor? And if that, well, then she has credibility, no matter what her rate is. And also, she doesn't risk. There's more risk involved in testifying in court. Because if you all of a sudden are not proffered or not allowed to testify due to a judge or a defense or something, then you're in trouble. So hence the higher rate because of higher risk.
Yep. By the way, this
forensic
attorney
work,
charges
that's going to bring
$400.
you in a lot more money than it is
Hang on.
somebody coming in off the street for therapy.
From an hour-to-hour basis, yes.
Yes. How many forensic cases have you had since you started your own practice?
Currently I have 6 open cases and I have 2 others that I've completed since.
Okay, so a total of 8?
Yes.
All right, and do you know how many you were hired by the prosecutor?
Yes.
How many?
For my 6 open cases, I have, and you're talking about just criminal?
Well, no, I mean, prosecutor would mean criminal. Is there any other?
So for my 6 open cases, I have 2 by the prosecutor, which includes this one.
Okay,
I have 1 by the defense attorney.
Okay.
And I have 1 by the court.
okay,
And I have 2 civil cases. One I'm a consultant and the other I've been hired as an expert witness by the defense.
okay. And what kind of case is that? Is that criminal that you're hired
The
by the
last
defense?
2, those last 2 are civil. I have 1 criminal defense.
Okay, so just one criminal defense that you're hired on.
Yes.
And when you
That's
worked for
open.
Bayless, you also did forensic work, right?
Yes.
And for Bayless, you also worked for the prosecutor, right? You were hired by prosecutors.
As much as the defense.
You would say it was 50-50?
When I was at Bayless,
Yeah,
most of the work that I did, I was in conjunction with Dr. Bayless.
right. But I was asking you that, are you telling me that when you worked at Bayless, that you worked 50% of the time hired by the prosecutor and 50% of the time hired by defense?
Actually, more so related to the court. I was hired more often by the court.
Okay, so not 50-50 for prosecution and defense then?
I would say roughly, and by the court. I would say that there's an equal amount.
Well, I'm not talking about the court though. So I'm talking about prosecutors hiring you versus defense attorneys like me hiring you.
I wouldn't say that there was more prosecution. It was roughly 50-50. I would have to look at the numbers. That's not something that I keep track of.
Okay.
That's
Well,
good to have equal numbers or substantially equal
Yeah.
in your resume.
Mm.
Makes you appear
Yeah.
less biased.
Yeah, it seems like at the time, young woman, Dr. DeMarte, she's jumped from place to place to get the experience needed, and now she's nowadays she have had her private practice for 12 or 13 years, and
Yeah,
it
it's been a
seems
while.
like she's very successful in her area. So
Again, I've reached out to her on Facebook. I've got to call her office during the week, during the day, and I forgot to do that during the week, during the day, because I got other things to do. But I need to contact her and see if she'd be willing to come in for an interview. Because
maybe she wants to play. Maybe she wants to build Lego and talk about the Jodi case.
She might. But either way, I want to interview her. So I want to get her thoughts on this case.
Hmm?
It'd be very interesting. Is it not playing?
Yeah, it's playing.
Oh, I see. I hear it now.
All right. You remember when we did an interview with you, the defense, Mr. Nermi and I interviewed you in
Yes.
January of 2013, right?
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about this issue, right?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you told us that you had 2 criminal cases with the county attorney's office, right?
Correct.
And only 1 with the defense. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So not just 1 with the county attorney's office.
Well, I'm speaking about this case and another that's consistent with what I just gave you right now.
2 cases with the county
Would you like
attorney's
me to
office.
review it again? I have 6 total cases open right now.
Snappy.
Okay. When we interviewed you,
Yes.
you talked about having 4 cases, criminal cases. Let's talk criminal, okay?
Okay.
Okay, you told us that you had 4 criminal cases, right?
I would review your notes on that. Does it say 4 criminal cases?
It does say 4.
So including this one?
Yes.
Mr. Glass, that you provided the transcript, she's attempting to impeach her for recollection.
Approach, please.
Okay, so they are trying for inconsistency. And if this is the defense notes, it doesn't really bear that much because they might have written wrong. They asked about cases, but not specifically about criminal cases. We don't know.
All right, so then, Dr. DeMarte, you'd agree that you have 2 cases with the county attorney's office, right?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, they lost.
Yeah.
And you told
Well,
us that
again-
you spent 12 hours speaking.
Oh, she had to backpedal fast on that statement.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out she read her own notes wrong. Yeah. I mean, at what time? We've been listening to her cross-examination of Dr. DeMarte now for a grand top. I think she's been on the stand right about now for maybe 3 hours, being cross-examined. At what point do you just, oh, fuck it, I don't want to go down this route anymore? For me, the defense have overstayed this by quite a large amount of time. But if they don't have any choice, this is what they have to do. But
Yep.
at what point do you actually just give it up? Because now you're only feeding the prosecutor the chance to rebut more and more, the more they ask. So,
And he's going to take full advantage of it. I think he should just sit down, though, because this isn't working for me, and just let it be. But we'll see.
Yeah. But remember, this is Angry Elf. And if he has the chance to talk, he will talk.
He absolutely will talk.
With Ms. Arias, is that right?
Yes.
But you spent additional time over that to review the materials, didn't you?
Yes.
And did you review the materials prior to speaking with Jodi or after?
There was a lot of material, so I reviewed some of it before, some of it during, and some of it after.
So while she's talking to you, you were also reading the materials?
Oh, let me clarify. What I mean is during the same day. So not while she was talking to me, but maybe later that day or between sessions. So continually reviewing records.
All right. And so at the point that you
Something like
finished your 12 hours
48,000
with Jodi,
pages.
were you still reading any more materials or had you completed them all?
I had not completed them all.
Okay. And so after speaking with Jodi, then you continued reading the materials.
That's correct.
And you never went back to clarify anything with Jodi after you continued reading the materials, right?
That's correct.
You just spent the 12 hours
For
talking to her.
in interviewing and then more hours in testing.
Right.
That's correct.
But in testing, you're not actually interviewing her, right?
The day that I tested, I talked to her. I added some additional information, and you can see that in my notes.
So did you want to add to your 12-hour?
It was about 12 hours. And then the day that I tested her was about 5.5 hours.
Okay. And that 5.5 hours is testing, right?
I would say maybe about 15 to 30 minutes of that, I followed up with some questions for her.
Okay. And so really the time that you spent interviewing her would be 12.5 hours then?
Between 12 and 12.5, yes.
Okay. And about how many hours do you think you spent reviewing the case altogether?
A lot of time.
Which is what?
I can't give you a specific number, but there was a lot of records, as you know, a lot of videotapes to watch, police interviews. There's a significant amount of records, diary. If I gave you a number, I would be making it up.
A bit of these, Well, this is interesting because of the question. This is one of these don't ask questions you don't know the answer to. Now
Right.
the jury finds out there's more than they have been shown.
Well, and there's a better way to ask that question, right?
Yeah.
She's asking very open-ended questions. This is cross-examination. You should be asking direct or leading questions, right? Not open-ended questions. So there's a lot of material, correct? Yes. And it took you a significant amount of time to go through it, correct? Yes. And because of the amount of material, you weren't able to look at everything, correct? Yes. You know, you kind of keep them in a box. You know, you don't need to allow them to do the
yes,
open-ended.
no, and then yes, no questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer should only be confirming the attorney's statement.
Yeah.
I don't know a specific number.
All right, well, you had a bill for this time, didn't you?
I did.
Okay, do you have an idea then what you billed for it?
I don't have my billing records. But it has spent a significant amount of time, more than I did in talking with her. And part of that was because I did find some inconsistencies of what she was saying.
Yeah, you know what? The interesting thing is you're talking to me about inconsistencies, but that's not what we're talking about. So what we're talking about. Well,
Oh,
Argumentative, maybe a little.
and
Well, you did it to yourself, lady.
yeah, this self-inflicted error. I mean, seriously, lawyer, you need to check yourself sometimes. Now she realized, oops, I stepped into it. Tries to and gives the opening to the prosecutor. Objection sustained.
There's a lot of like crossover between Amber Heard and Jodi, to the point even the attorneys, right? Remember Amber Heard's attorney objected to the answer to the question he asked.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. I mean, you asked the question, right?
Yeah. Karate Cat mom. Own goal.
Yep. Exactly.
what we're talking about here, Dr. DeMarte, is the hours you spent, okay? So the hours you spent with Jodi, you're telling me is 12 to 12 and a half, right?
That's correct.
And you have no idea then how many hours you spent in addition to that reviewing these materials.
I can't give you a number, no.
Okay, even though you would have billed for it.
That's correct.
And for that, you would have billed $250 an hour, right?
That's correct.
And do you think it's over 100 hours?
I do not think so.
Do you
Off
think it's
the top
over
of my
50?
head. Probably, yes, over 50.
Over 50, okay. And that's all hours that you're billing to the prosecutor, right? His office is paying you.
Correct. I sent my bill to him,
Right, and then,
except for the bill I sent to you.
right, and that was for the interview, right?
That's
that
correct.
Mr. Nurmi and I did with you.
Correct.
Which is great.
Besides speaking to Jodi for 12 or 12 and a half hours, you spoke to one other person, right?
Yes,
And that was Stephen Alexander?
yes,
That was about 30 minutes, right?
correct,
And that's it.
correct.
You didn't speak to anybody else.
I did not speak to anybody else.
You didn't do any other interviews.
That's correct.
And so all of the information that you have is based on your psychological testing, right?
And
All you have.
That's part of it, right?
that's part of it.
And the materials you reviewed,
Correct.
and a 30-minute conversation with Travis's brother.
And behavioral observations.
Okay, and a 30-minute interview with Travis's brother,
Yes.
right? Okay.
That's a lot. And she starts off with all you did was. And then follows up with, that's a ton of work.
Well, you can see this professional witness when she says, and the last thing you did was interview with the Travis brother, whoever. Yeah. And she's like, oh, also observational work. And we're like, well, I didn't ask you about that, but she's going to go off script. So you got to keep it tight.
Yeah. This isn't going to go. I mean, I like this shrink. She's,
I do too. That's why I want to interview her. She's going to be amazing.
yeah.
I want to go back to this advertisement in Psychology Today. In this, you list your qualifications, right?
I believe so.
Where you went to school
Yes,
and that you graduated in 2009.
yes,
It gives us your license number in Arizona.
yes,
And it also tells us that you have practiced for 8 years.
yes,
But as we established yesterday, you've been practicing as a psychologist really for just 3 years. Isn't that true?
yes.
Okay.
Since 2010.
Yes. And in your advertisement, you don't clarify what you mean by practice here. You just claim 8 years.
Right, because they don't have a space for that.
Okay, so it was okay to put 8 years, and even though it's really only been 3 years that you're practicing as a psychologist.
That's an incorrect statement. I have not been practicing for 3 years.
You've been practicing as a psychologist longer than that?
You're adding the word psychologist to it. I've been
Right.
practicing since 2004.
Well, so you've been practicing since 2004, but that was as a student, wasn't it?
In 2004, yes.
And you were supervised at that time?
Yes.
Okay, and so when you say practicing, starting in 2004, what you mean is you're practicing as a student who's being supervised by somebody who's actually licensed.
Right. And what that means is that I see my own patients. It's not as though the supervising psychologist is sitting in the room participating in the treatment or evaluation.
But you're being supervised.
Yes,
right?
I'm being
You're
supervised.
not allowed to do it without supervision.
That's correct.
And in fact, starting in 2004, that was when you had your master's, right?
I mean, I see where the defense is going here, but this is standard practice in that field. You are still practicing even though you have a supervisor.
For example, I started practicing law in December of 2010. I was still in law school. I hadn't been licensed to practice law on my own, but I was allowed to practice with another attorney directly supervising me. And I had my very first unassisted trial in December of 2010. Then I had my very first unassisted jury trial in January of 2010. And I had a third trial unassisted in like March of 2010, all before I even graduated law school. So I say I've been practicing since 2010. I was licensed in 2011.
I wonder
January
what this attorney says on her resume. I've been practicing law since. Yeah, but practicing law and being an attorney is two different. Being an attorney can be two different numbers. You've been an attorney since 2012,
right?
But you've been practicing law since 2010.
Yep.
And that's,
yeah,
something like
and she's misreading her resume specifically, and she's called out for it, but she still pushes the issue. You've been called out for it, lady. Move on, because you're not making your point. Oh, I was going to answer Patty. She actually did a bunch of sketches during the trial and sold them. So somewhere out there are Jodi originals from the trial that she was just sketching.
And if Jodi Arias, for some reason, sometime in the future, gets out of prison, she's a millionaire. She can't use it, but apparently she has a net worth in excess of $2 million.
That's what they say.
Sal, did you hear that? Start working.
That's incorrect.
When did you get your master's?
2005.
Okay, so you talked that you've been practicing even before you had your master's. You just had your bachelor's then.
I was in school seeing patients on a regular basis.
In school, earning your master's, right?
Earning my master's.
Okay, so when you're earning your master's, you only have a bachelor's degree.
Yes.
Okay, so you consider having your bachelor's degree working towards your master's as practice.
Yes.
Okay, and when you get your master's, you also consider that to be practice, that you're practicing.
Just like other master's level counselors.
Right, but you didn't have a license, a therapist license, right?
Because it was unnecessary.
But you didn't have one.
I didn't.
Okay, so when you're practicing with your master's, what are you practicing?
Therapy.
Okay, and so you're practicing therapy without a therapist license.
Right, that happens all the time. That's part of what happens in this field.
Okay, well, you're aware that Alice LaViolette, you spoke of her yesterday, right?
Yes.
And that she had her master's.
Yes.
And in fact, besides her master's, she has a therapy license, right?
Yes.
And that's what she practices, right?
Yes.
But you were doing it without a license. You were waiting for your doctorate and your psychology license.
I wasn't waiting. I was going through the process of achieving my
pause it
doctorate.
real quick?
And part of that is we do therapy.
I just want to make a political commentary. For anyone who's saying this is the patriarchy and whatnot, 10, 11 years ago, we have a female judge, female expert witness, female defendant, female court reporter, and female defense attorney doing the class. I saw the split screen and I saw everybody. I wanted to point that out. Because I felt like this is society if women ran everything. It popped into my head, and I was like, "Oh, there you go."
Therapy and evaluations throughout the years.
Okay, so when somebody comes in or calls your office from this advertisement and asks about your years in practice being 8 years, do you clarify with them that this is a master's level practice and psychology is only 3 years?
As it lists on there, it shows when I got my license. So yes, absolutely, I can clarify with them if they ask.
If they ask.
Right. If they ask about my years of experience, in fact, I did that 2 weeks ago with somebody.
Okay, and you had to clarify it with them, right?
They had a lot of questions about my background. Yes, and I provided that
The
information.
first trial, the original trial. She
Yeah.
went through a second trial for death penalty, to which she didn't get the death penalty. And then there's been a bunch of appeals, which just got resolved right when we were starting to rewatch this original trial. This is from 2013,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Also on this advertisement, there's a place to list special.
Yeah, as Justin said, she wouldn't be able to get her license if she didn't practice before being licensed. And I mean, if you're a carpenter, you might have started out as a carpenter apprentice, but you still practiced, even though as an apprentice.
Yep.
You have still worked as a carpenter for those amount of years. I mean, this is so stupid. But the jury might not know about the differences. But I can assure you, this lawyer, the attorney, definitely knows, and she probably does the same herself. How long have you been practicing law? For this amount of years. Okay, when did you get your law license? Not the same amount of years. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Ariel makes a point here. This is so when women did everything, Jodi was found guilty, but when men did everything, Casey Anthony was acquitted. Therefore, you agree women do it better. Probably.
Yeah, see, Ty, she is beginning to sound like the angry elf.
Yeah, she's learning, but with the wrong points and the wrong witness. That's all.
Yeah.
Specialties, right?
Yes.
And you have listed under specialties testing and evaluation, right?
Yes.
And you've been doing that since 2004.
Correct.
And personality disorders.
Yes.
And the third one you list is trauma and PTSD.
Yes.
And you list that as a specialty.
Yes.
Looking through your CV, though, where in here does it talk about expertise with regarding trauma?
That's a patient population that I've seen since 2004.
Trauma patients.
Yes.
So only trauma patients?
No.
Lots of different patients, right?
Right.
And so you're including that some of your patients have had traumas to them, right?
Right.
And so in your CV specifically, you don't list that you've had any specific interviews with trauma victims, right?
Because I don't list out my patients on there, that would be inappropriate.
Well, no, not their names, of course, but I mean, you're not on your CV. There's nowhere on here that you ever say that you conducted interviews with trauma patients. Right?
That's correct, because if I did that, the CV would be 50 pages long, because then I'd have to list out every patient and type of evaluation and interview that I've done. It just seems unnecessary. I'd rather spend my time with my patients.
Well, you list only 3 specialties, right?
That was just for they had a random list of things to choose from, and those were the areas that I had a lot of experience in and really enjoy working in, so I listed those.
Right, so you chose to list these 3 specialties.
Yes.
And nowhere on your CV does it ever talk about you doing any specific research with trauma victims.
Oh, sure, it does. There's several of them on there.
Which ones?
We can go back to the research that we talked about yesterday,
Uh-huh.
the mother and infant study.
The one where from 03 to 04?
I've been burned like this.
Sure, that one was specific to domestic violence.
I've been burned like this, where I didn't read like a CV thoroughly.
Oh.
And I was basing it off of my conversation with the expert, and I didn't read through the CV like really specifically. Yeah, you gotta cross those I's and dot those T's, right?
Yeah. And Dr. DeMarte looks very satisfied.
Yes.
And I want to see that moment once more.
That was good.
Nowhere on your CV does it ever talk about you doing any specific research with trauma victims.
Oh, sure, it does. There's several of them on there.
Which ones?
We can go back to the research that we talked about yesterday.
This is so amazing. Oh, defense attorney, if you had quit yesterday, this wouldn't have happened. Now you look incompetent for not reading the actual CV.
Again,
Ouch!
you attack her lack of experience. Don't get caught up in the nitty-gritty, right?
Yeah.
Well, you haven't been practicing for 8 years. You've only been practicing for 3. That's a stupid way to argue this. You've only been practicing for 8 years. 10,000 hours, it's a famous saying, 10,000 hours of practicing something makes you an expert. You don't have 10,000 hours, do you? You could do some sort of like general and then move on, right?
Yeah. But now she got into the itty-gritty and oh my God, it backfired.
Yeah.
Yesterday,
Uh-huh.
the mother and infant study.
The one where from 03 to 04?
Sure, that one was specific to domestic violence.
Okay.
Also, all of the subsequent research when I was looking at the pattern of aggressiveness and antisocial behavior, the vast majority of those individuals had trauma backgrounds.
Okay. And so, but you don't list trauma in here. You're talking about antisocial. You specifically list antisocial behavior, right? In your CV?
I do,
But you don't specifically list trauma, do you?
right? Because I just don't feel it necessary to pad my CV.
I understand why you don't, but it's not listed, right?
That's correct for that.
And you don't list anywhere that you had teaching specific to trauma, right?
If you could, do you want to reference my teaching experience?
Sure. Well, I mean, do you have anywhere where you specifically list that you taught specifically about trauma?
Oh, don't.
Did I use the word trauma in my CV? No. Did I teach about trauma? Yes.
Okay, but then you didn't specifically list it out, right?
Right. In addition,
You paid to interview this woman. Remember, we were talking about how much she was paid for? And the interview that you conducted with me, you paid for that. Did you not ask her these questions ahead of time?
Yeah.
You don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
This is I mean, if I padded my CV, it would be 50 pages long. You never do that because it's not necessary. And that is why you do follow-up questions about the CV. Is it anything in this CV you haven't? Is there something you consider yourself an expert or close to an expert in that you haven't listed here? It's one simple question. And this defense attorney paid $250 for an hour for a few hours and did not ask that question. This makes her look incompetent, not the expert.
to every other area that I've lectured about, I did not list it out.
So there's additional teaching that you've done that you didn't list in your CV. Is that what you're saying?
No, for example, you're talking about trauma. I also didn't list schizophrenia in there. I also didn't list about bipolar disorder in there because it would make my CV extremely long. And the point is that I taught several courses at an undergraduate level in abnormal psychology. And that's a really important piece in there is trauma.
When you were an undergraduate or you taught to undergraduates?
No, when I was a graduate. When I was a graduate student, I taught 4 courses at Michigan State University independently.
Okay. And any of those courses titled
Michigan
trauma
State.
victims or anything to do with trauma?
No, it's titled abnormal psychology.
You were saying something?
No, I was just reading to you. This is rebuttal testimony, and the prosecutor was ripping the defense experts on their CV. Yes. But you need to know what you're asking. So, I don't mind ripping on the CV, particularly with regard to this expert's lack of experience compared to the defense experts that have, however many years, 20 years of experience versus her 8, right? So we could talk about all of that. But when you're asking specific things and you're getting it wrong, this is like the 3rd time now, it makes it look bad.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Abnormal psychology is the title, but you need to ask, okay, what does this mean? Oh, apparently she didn't. And this is on the defense attorney, and this is the good defense attorney of the 2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's just not good at asking questions and doesn't know the information.
Yeah.
Okay. And so part of the abnormal psychology that would touch on trauma, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what you're saying your teaching experience is?
That's one of my teaching experiences.
Okay. And you don't list any specific assessments that you've done with trauma victims, right?
For the same reasons.
Okay. And you don't have any publications having to do with trauma, right? You only have 2 publications to begin with, right?
And one publication is related to community violence. So that would be exposure to trauma.
Okay. And so did you talk specifically, I know we're talking about exposure to trauma, but did you talk specifically about trauma, the aspects of trauma, and the different instruments that are used to measure trauma?
No, it was about exposure to community violence and the effects that happen as a result of that.
Okay. And as far as being a member of associations, you're not a member of any specific trauma association, right?
That's correct. I'm a member of the large American Psychological Association and related.
Right, but you're not a member of any specific trauma association.
That's correct.
And you have, part of having your license these days, you have to keep up with education, don't you?
Yes.
You have to do continuing education so many hours a year?
Yes.
And part of that is attending, do you attend conferences then?
You can.
Okay. Have you ever attended the International Society for Study of Trauma and Disassociation?
No,
You ever read that journal?
I can't say off the top of my head.
All right. Did you ever read the Journal for International Society for the Study of Traumatic Stress?
I can't say what journals I've read. I read journal articles multiple times a week.
Okay. But you can't specifically tell us that you've read either one of these
This is
specific
called-
trauma journals, right?
I don't know.
Have you ever even attended the International Conference of Violence, Abuse, and Trauma? It's given every year.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
She's over there coloring like a child at a dinner table waiting for the meal.
Yeah.
You see her like
But-
erasing stuff and brushing it off.
But she's wearing her glasses today. So
And she is, you're right.
yeah, on yesterday, the moment this Dr. DeMarte took the stand, Jodi took off her glasses immediately.
She put them back on only when the doctor was leaving the courtroom.
Yeah.
So we thought maybe she had like an envious sort of thing.
Mm.
Hey, Christine.
And these, I mean, I don't know about the field of psychology, but if you're a practicing psychologist, there's just this many times a year you can actually go on conferences. I mean, in labor law, I attend maybe 2 a year, and there's a lot of labor law specifics that are so obscure, but they still have their conference. And I think it sounds like these particular conferences are specific to people who only work in those areas. It sounds like it. And that is why she's using them, because she guesses that Dr. DeMarte really doesn't know about them.
But you shouldn't guess. You had a meeting with her. You paid for a meeting with her.
Yeah.
So ask the questions then before she's on the stand.
Yeah.
You also talked yesterday about some of the testing that you did, and some of the testing that you did, you gave the RAT, right?
Yes,
WRAT.
correct.
And you took, and when you talk about the 5.5 hours you spent doing testing, is that part of the 5.5 hours?
Yes,
It's a pretty simple test though, right?
that's a very quick test.
Okay. And I think you described yesterday, is it just them being able to read words?
Yes,
And so you wanted to give this test to make sure that she could ultimately do the MMPI,
correct.
because you wanted to make sure she can read.
Right.
But prior to giving her the RAT, you had at least reviewed some of the material, hadn't you?
Yes,
And you had seen some of her journals.
yes,
And so from her journals, you see that she can write, right?
yes,
And in fact, she's really, you said, well, she writes quite a bit, right?
yes.
And based on that, you were still concerned that she couldn't read?
I wasn't concerned. I was engaging in good practice of ensuring that she would be able to do it.
So despite reading all her journals and despite talking to her, you felt it was good practice to administer a test to make sure she can read.
Yes,
Okay, here's the thing. She doesn't have firsthand knowledge that those are actually her journals, right?
Yeah.
She didn't sit there and see and watch Jodi write those things.
Yeah.
So if we're to
she
assume
doesn't
that
know-
it's her journals,
Yeah.
but she takes the test and clearly cannot read or write, then we have an issue, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and she doesn't know the period of time it took Jodi to write these journals.
that's
It-
true.
I mean, it could be a one page where she slowly writes out the word. That's why you do those tests.
We've read Jodi's manifesto. We know
Yeah.
that sometimes it's hard for Jodi to form coherent thoughts.
Yeah. And she's very fond of using big words, maybe not the correct context.
Yeah.
But she's very fond of big words.
Yes, she is.
especially since it's such a brief test.
So you wanted to make sure she could read.
Yeah, yes,
And you also gave the WAIS, right?
correct.
And the WAIS is an overall intelligence test.
Yes,
And that basically gives an IQ score, doesn't it? Does it give an
yes, it does give an IQ score.
Okay. Prior to giving her the WAIS, you had some contact with her, right? You had your 12 hours of time.
Yes,
and you were able to talk with her back and forth,
Yes,
and you had read through some of her journals?
yes.
Had you read through the text messages back and forth between her and Mr. Alexander?
I don't remember at that time if I had gone through all of them, presumably some of them.
Okay, and you had read through some of the emails, maybe?
Yes,
And so at that point in time, seeing her being able to follow conversations and having 12 hours with her where you're talking back and forth with her, you were still concerned that she had some kind of mental deficiency?
you're using the word concerned. I was being comprehensive. There was information in the data, being the records, that suggested that she had a sense of immaturity, and that's something that I observed also.
So the sense of immaturity means that she had a low IQ. Is that what you were worried about?
I was curious about what that immaturity could mean, because it could mean a broad variety of things, and so I wanted to be comprehensive and rule it out by giving an IQ test.
Okay, so comprehensive IQ. All right. So, and what you found out is that she actually has a pretty high IQ, right?
That's correct.
During both of these tests, these were two of the tests that took part of the 5.5 hour time, right?
Yes,
And during this time, you were being paid, what, $2.50 an hour?
that's correct.
Yesterday, you spoke about the other testing and generally speaking, the objectivity of testing, right?
Yes,
And how you also spoke about having a lack of compassion when you're conducting these tests, right? And interviewing people.
a lack of compassion.
Right.
Can you clarify what you mean by that?
That you don't have a lot of compassion when you're doing these interviews, right?
What I said is that I don't walk in having compassion for the person immediately, and that it's possible to have compassion.
It's okay. So it's possible
That's
to
a
have compassion.
snub
Okay.
at the defense
But you were
expert.
talking about making sure.
Yeah.
That was a huge snub at the defense experts that came in and said, well, we read all these materials and I felt really sorry for Jodi. And they gave her gifts. They were like self-help books and stuff.
Yeah, and the actual psychologist, the sex therapist guy, that's against his ethic rules to give anything, and he gave her a book. A therapist doesn't have those ethic rules, and she gave Jodi numerous books, and apparently we might see some of Jodi's self-defense formulating through those books. So
Yeah, I believe we do.
involuntarily, Dr. Devoalet aided Jodi's defense. And then she
a lot of the
testified,
same.
and then testified about that self-defense thingy. I still wonder what actually came first, and I think Dr. Devoalet's opinions came before Jodi's, because she started out interviewing Jodi when Jodi still claimed it was ninjas.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So what we're talking about is the timeline of events. Jodi was saying that two ninjas broke in and did this. Then she meets with a psychiatrist or psychologist. The sex therapist.
The psychologist from New York, who doesn't practice in New York anymore because they told him he couldn't fraternize that way with his patient.
Yes.
And then it was psychotherapist Lavoilette, who doesn't have a psychologist degree. And she's that therapist Lavoilette started interviewing Jodi while Jodi still claimed ninjas did it. During the time of those interviews, she apparently changed her mind and started with the self-defense thing.
Yep. So I think the timeline of events is clear that the book and the interviews with the defense's expert influenced Jodi on her defense.
Yeah.
And she ended up going with self-defense because she thought that was going to be viable.
Yeah.
That this was a very objective test, right?
Yes.
And any interviews that you do would be objective
Yes.
as possible.
Yes.
So in that way, the test scores would mean a lot to you, wouldn't they?
If they're objective?
Yes.
Yes. It's another data point.
Okay. Well, everything's a data point, right?
Right.
I mean, if you talk to somebody over here, if you read something over here, you would classify all of that as data points, right?
I agree with that.
Okay. And so when you're doing these testing, you were talking about how these tests, different tests that you can do, are objective. Ultimately, these tests are computer scored, right?
Correct.
And so with the tests that you perform, the TSI and the MMPI, those are the
MMPI is computer scored and the TSI is scored by hand, the version that I have.
okay, so you didn't computer score the TSI.
That's correct.
You could have, right?
There's versions out there. That's not the one I had.
Okay, so you didn't have the Pearson version? Did you have a different version?
What I mean by that is there's different scoring sheets. The scoring sheet I had was a two-way scoring sheet. When you write on it, it kind of scores it behind the scenes automatically, and then you just have to tally up some stuff versus imputing it into a computer.
Okay, so you did it the hand scoring then?
Yes.
All right, but you would still consider that objective?
Yes.
So just because somebody does hand scoring doesn't mean it's a subjective test, right?
Unless the data is altered. If it's done per protocol, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So in other words, if the person is hand scoring and done per protocol, you would agree that that's objective.
Yes.
All right. You talked a little bit about the PDS test yesterday, and that was something that Dr. Samuels gave, right?
Yes.
You didn't do that one.
No.
And the PDS test, you've only given that once before, isn't that right?
I've never given the PDS before.
You what?
I've never given the PDS before.
Oh, okay. And the PDS test, that is something specific for post-traumatic stress, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and that's one of your specialties, right?
Right.
According to the website that you advertise on?
Yes.
And you've never given the post-traumatic stress test, the PDS test?
Right, because there's a number of other measures. I'm very familiar with Edna Foa's work, though, who's the creator of the test.
Who's the creator?
Edna Foa.
And you're familiar with the
I don't submit the test, but I'm familiar with the person who created the test. And
That's great.
Apparently, the defense attorney had no clue who created the test.
Yeah.
And now, I don't blame her, but it's still kaboom back.
Yeah, I think you need to. Well, she wasn't expecting that answer.
Oh,
But here's
no,
the thing. Again, I'm going to just keep coming back. You don't ask a question you don't know an answer to. Ask the question in the meeting. If you get an answer you don't like, then at least you know it ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
but you didn't own a copy of it, right?
Right.
And in fact, you had to go buy your own copy to understand what Dr. Samuels did.
Incorrect.
Well, you had to buy your own copy because you didn't have the test questions, right?
I didn't buy a copy.
Oh, did you borrow it from someone else?
I obtained a copy from a colleague who had it.
Oh, okay. So because you didn't have it.
I did not have it.
All right. So because and what you had from Dr. Samuels was Jodi's answers to the PDS test, right?
That's all he gave me.
Okay. And so what you didn't have then was the questions of what the PDS test itself, right?
Right.
And that's what you say you borrowed from a colleague.
The actual test questions.
Wait, the defense expert only gave her the answers and not the actual questions to the answers?
That sounds a lot like what they attacked defense counsel or a defense expert for, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah, that.
So
that's-
this is where she should say, much like whatever his name is,
Hmm.
you didn't have the questions either. You hand
Exactly.
scored them, just like our guy said.
Yeah.
That's where she should be
All
going
right.
in.
And so because you haven't given the test before, you didn't really have any experience giving it then, right? Because you've never done it.
I didn't have experience giving that. It's a basic self-report measure, similar to many other measures.
So, but you didn't have any experience giving it.
Giving that one in particular, no.
Okay. And so the only way that you had the questions to the PDS test is because you had to go get them from a colleague. Is that right?
Yes,
And you weren't given them by the defense at all.
that's correct.
And those test questions, those are,
You. So the defense attorney admits in front of the jury they didn't hand over the questions to the answers. I don't think this is a good thing, defense attorney.
Mm-mm.
You didn't hand over the questions to the answers. Well, then of course she has to. I mean, Jesus Christ.
considered raw data, aren't they?
The test questions or the bubble sheet?
Well, both.
No, only the bubble sheet is considered raw data.
Okay, so the raw data then would be Jodi's answers, right?
That's correct.
All right, and the test questions, that's something that's created by the owners of the PDS test
Correct.
and the creators of the PDS test.
Correct.
And so, in fact, these owners, the people who do these tests or created these tests and own them are Pearson Assessments, right?
I think that's who distributes it. I don't know how their contract works. Edna Foa is the developer, I thought.
Right, well, there's a specific doctor who ultimately created the test,
Right.
right? Okay, and then once the doctor creates the test, it gets distributed by a company. right?
Sure, if that, I don't know the process.
Oh, all right. The company that owns the test now, and if you look at the PDS test, it has Pearson on it. Do you need to look at it?
No, I'm aware of that.
Okay. And so Pearson would be the people who have the copyright on this test, right?
Again, I'm not familiar with the laws pertaining to that, who has copyright, whether it's the developer of the test or Pearson.
Okay. Well,
It's outside of my scope of knowledge.
all right. You've certainly seen different tests before, right? I mean,
Yes.
you've seen the MMPI, right?
I've seen many tests.
She's just so like, yes, I've seen many tests.
And, I mean, there's a lot of companies out there who obtains the copyright of different things, music, videos, anything. They buy the rights to that, and apparently Pearson's bought the rights from the creator of the test.
Great.
So
What's
they
that
are
have
the
to do
distributors.
with the way mustard tastes? That's my whole point. Like, what is she trying to get at here?
Yeah, and what's the relevance? Who owns the copyright to a specific test?
You didn't create it. You don't know it.
All right. I'm
don't
showing
know
you
if you're
exhibit
doing
number
it right.
550.
I can see that.
That's the front page of the PDS, right?
Yes,
And you're talking about Edna FOA, right?
yes,
And you see at the bottom it says Pearson.
yes,
And you see at the bottom, we actually have a warning on it, don't we?
yes,
Okay. And this particular test is copyrighted, right? You're aware of how psychological tests are copyrighted, aren't you?
yes.
Okay. And so this particular test is copyrighted, right?
It looks like it, yes.
And according to this copyright, there's a warning on it that no part of this publication may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means without, and then it goes on, without permission in writing from the copyright owner, right?
Yes,
So let the
Okay.
copyright owner.
And you work with,
Yeah, but if the psychologist she works with is contracted by her, you are within the realm of copyright. So it's not infringement in this case, in my opinion.
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter if the copyright holder, ma'am, Miss Defense Attorney, don't be like YouTube. Let the copyright holder worry about it.
Yeah.
multiple tests all the time that have copyrights, right?
yes,
You understand that part of the idea of this copyright is that if the questions on these tests are somehow released to the public, it could invalidate the test, couldn't it?
yes,
And that's the importance of why the questions are copyrighted.
yes,
Because if all of a sudden all these test questions were released to the public, then everybody would be able to start practicing how to take these tests, right?
that's correct.
And it would make the test useless then.
Yes,
And it would make years of research useless
I think that's
in coming up with
taking
the
it a little
test.
bit far, but I think that it makes it difficult to then continue to use the test.
Right. So that's why it's important that these tests are copyrighted, right?
Yes,
So this information doesn't get released.
yes,
Now you're saying, you told us that you had these test questions because you had to get them from a colleague, right?
yes,
And in cross-examination of Dr. Samuels, are you aware that Mr. Martinez presented exhibit number 533?
he notified me of that
Okay, so he notified you that he was using the test questions, right?
after the fact.
After the fact.
Yes,
After the fact that he did it.
yes,
Okay, so when this is typed up, right? This isn't what the actual test looks like, right?
that's not what the test looks like,
Okay,
correct?
so to you, you can tell that this is something that has just been typed,
Yes,
not coming specifically from Pearson.
correct.
All right, and so these particular questions then are the questions that are contained on the PDS test, right?
That's what you're telling me?
Do you want to look at it?
Sure, without comparing it directly, I couldn't say if it was 100% item for item, identical. Is that what the question is?
No, just generally speaking, do you know if these are the test questions?
The few that I saw when it was up there, yes, it looked very similar.
Okay, all right.
Defense attorney, did you have copyright? Because now you showed it. I mean,
Let's go through each and every question, shall we, on the record?
yeah, this will invalidate it. Here they are. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't pique my interest earlier. Now it did. And I don't know about if you're using these, are they prohibited to use it in a legal setting?
No.
Maybe to show it on screen? I don't know. But now the defense is doing the infringement if that's the actual copyright, well, whatever the terms of service are.
Yeah.
And now she does it. So
I don't understand her point into going all this
No,
though.
I have no idea.
And the only way that Mr. Martinez had these test questions is because he got them from you, right?
I didn't give them to him, no.
You never gave him the test questions?
We reviewed them together.
Oh, okay. So you didn't let him take home a copy.
Jody's
That is
three-hole
correct. He
going
did
up
not take home a copy.
So at the time,
What?
I
Sorry,
added Jody's 3-hole to my background. Since we can't do it in the chat.
Well, with enough hours, you will get there.
That's right. Everybody watch my content. I got new videos I'm posting all the time.
time that you review them together, he would have been copying them down, right? To get them word for word.
At the time that we reviewed him, we were sitting there and we were talking about the concept of PTSD. We were talking about the PDS, the test, and reviewing it together. And he asked to see the items so we could understand what I was talking about. Gave him the items and we sat there and we discussed it. And he was taking notes as we were talking throughout our whole conversation.
And so throughout this conversation that you were talking to Mr. Martinez, you were talking to him and showing him the test questions, right?
In addition to a number of other things, yes.
Yes, you were showing him these test questions that are copyrighted, right?
I did show them to him, yes.
And you were aware at the time that Mr. Martinez is not a practicing psychologist, right?
That's correct.
He's not a mental health professional like you are,
Correct.
but you still shared the copyrighted information of those questions with him, right?
Yes.
That is not sharing. If you have the copyrighted material in front of you and you're discussing it with the defense attorney, I don't see how. Well, I don't know where she's going with this at all. Is she claiming copyright infringement? Yeah, I don't think the Pearsons. Yeah, I don't know. This is so. It's confusing why she's going down this. Is it? Oh, you did unethicals or something like that. This is just stupid. Hey,
All right, part of the PDS test, the part that you did get from Dr. Samuels was what you referred to as the raw data, right?
Correct.
And those are Jody's answers.
Correct.
And YouTube chose to turn my monetization yellow. Okay.
And
So no ad
during
revenue from this.
this test is broken up.
And for you who wonder, no, I don't have the ad option turned. I only turn monetization on to check if after this I can put ads in, and nah, not now. At least I can do this. I will actually show you monetization, and here you see insert mid-roll ads manually, and I don't. In the last 10 minutes, I will go up here and put in conservative, but undo changes. So that you shouldn't get ads at this point. The rewatch crew might get a few ads. T Underwood, why would they yellow unique? I see nothing that would yellow you because YouTube's.
Why are they yelling at you, Nick?
No, they are putting
yellowing.
Yellow.
All of our Jodi Arias stuff gets yellowed.
Yeah.
All of it. Doesn't even matter. As soon as it goes up, it gets yellowed.
Yeah. And then you ask for a review, and then a few days later it might turn green, but by then everybody has watched it. So no ad revenue.
Into different parts, isn't it?
Are you referring to the PDS?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's broken up with part one, it's discussing traumatic events, right?
Yes.
And in discussing traumatic events, it actually talks about, well, it actually asks you, let me just get the questions. It's asking questions about different traumatic events the person might have experienced, right?
Correct.
And if one of the traumatic events was not listed in the list on the test, it asks the person to list what traumatic event in addition they have, right?
Yes.
And you see that, again, this is exhibit 550. You see that Jodi answered that question, repeated emotional and psychological abuse, right?
Correct.
And you talk about, on part 2, it asks for a description of the trauma that's bothering them, right?
Say that again.
On part 2 of the PDS test, it's
Yes.
talking about a description of the trauma that's bothering them.
Can you show me what you're referring to?
Sure. Do you want to see the questions or?
Whatever you're referring to.
Me and my creaky chair. I may or may not have a new chair on the way.
Nice.
Also but now I actually so the frame isn't done in wood, so it's a steel frame. So because what creaks in this is because it's screwed into raw wood, so I can't oil it up or anything.
Well, it might also be my cat who is apparently attacking the bathroom door right now while I'm streaming.
All right, so you're talking about part 2 of the test, right?
Whatever section you're referring to, I'd like to see it.
Okay, so I'm showing you the mark 626, and these are the questions on part 2, right?
Yes.
All right, and the questions on part 2 are asking specifically about a trauma, right?
Yes.
And then we see on the answer sheet that there's room to briefly describe the traumatic event, right? Are you aware of that? Or do you need me to show it?
Show me what you're talking about.
Okay. And this is exhibit 550. We see on part 2 where it says briefly describe the traumatic event. You see that?
Yes.
And you see the answer is assaulted / life threatened,
Yes.
right?
This is all post, though. This is
Yeah.
all after the fact.
Yeah.
Is that relevant to her state of mind before
And
she unalived anyone?
Yeah, and also was this after Dr. Davoilette gave her the idea to blame being a battered woman? Because if it's after, well, ta-da. Then and also it's self-reporting, and Mr. Arias is gone. And yeah.
according to what Jodi has said to you, Travis assaulted her, right?
Are you checking
On
about the night of the
June 4th.
killing?
Yes.
Yes, according to what she told me.
And according to what she told you, she felt her life was threatened.
Yes.
According to what yeah.
All right, so then we go further into this test.
Did you, on defense attorney, will you also ask about her telling that ninjas did it or that she wasn't even there?
This was after I bet she met this expert as well. That she
Yeah.
came up with the whole ninja or self-defense stuff.
Yeah. T. Underwood, thank you for $10 towards Nick's squeaky chair replacement fund. That or a can of grease. Thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. Look, Dave, I got the super chat.
I noticed. Is it nice? Does it feel good and warm inside to get a super chat?
Yeah, I got a warm and fuzzy feeling in my tum tum.
I don't think it was your tum tum.
Well, you can never call me a three-hole wonder, anyways.
There you go.
Into the actual scoring part. And now again, I guess you rescored Dr. Samuels, right?
I did.
But other than that, you've never actually done it yourself with any of your patients?
That's correct.
Okay. And at the back end, when we talk about scoring, the scoring sheet goes through A, B, C, and D, doesn't it? Do you need to see it?
Sure. Are you talking about Dr. Samuels?
I'm just talking about the PDS test. The PDS test scoring sheet, this is what we're looking at,
That's a
right?
hand scoring sheet. Yes.
Right, it's a hand scoring sheet, and for the PDS test, right?
Yes.
And we see section A, B, C, and D, right?
Yes.
And these A, B, C, and D follow the criteria in the DSM-4, don't they? Criterion A, exposure to traumatic event.
The 3 that you're showing me so far, yes.
Okay. And same with D, arousal.
Yes.
Okay. And according to this PDS test, Miss Arias meets these criteria, doesn't she?
According to this
PDS test, she meets the criteria for A, B, C, and D.
according to the falsified traumatic event that she was referring to.
This falsified traumatic event that you want to keep talking about,
Objection. Keep talking about improper question.
overruled. We just established that this event, this trauma that she's talking about is when she was, again, I'm showing you the same exhibit, assaulted and her life was threatened, right?
By a stranger.
And that's going to make a difference to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it doesn't say stranger here, right?
That's what number 4 is?
No, I'm talking about the handwriting. It doesn't say stranger,
Okay.
does it?
Correct. That doesn't say stranger there.
It just says that she was assaulted and she felt her life was threatened, right?
Right.
Okay, and so if somebody's assaulted and their life is threatened by someone they know, then that's not traumatic. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're
Okay.
mischaracterizing what I'm saying.
All right, well, then you would agree that that's traumatic, right?
Ask the question again, please.
If somebody was assaulted and their life was threatened by someone they know, that would be traumatic.
It could be traumatic, yes.
Because Gwyneth
Okay.
Paltrow is not there
And
telling her to land
So
the
sometimes
plane.
when somebody's life is threatened, that may not be traumatic.
Right, it depends on the person's perception of it.
And their perception is that they've been assaulted and their life is threatened. That, according to you, may not cause any trauma to somebody.
It could cause a trauma, absolutely.
All right.
Depends on if she actually was assaulted.
Oh, also with regard to this PDS test, we see on the bottom, there's in a scoring sheet,
And remember,
and I'm showing you the same exhibit. You see this,
when the defense expert showed it, she scored below the criteria for actual PTSD. Even though she self-reported, she still didn't reach the threshold for actual PTSD. So it doesn't really matter. She scored high by self-reporting a lie, and she didn't. But it didn't meet the criteria. So what?
Yeah.
But I assume that Mr. Martinez, Mr. Angry Elf, will, in his rebuttal, he will point that out again.
I'm not looking forward to his rebuttal. I don't think she's doing any damage. He shouldn't ask any questions. And every time he asks a question, I can't stand him. So I'm hoping he decides to skip it.
Yeah. But very few of the judge has retired. Nurmi was disbarred. Martinez voluntarily gave up his law license. The only one who actually practices in that room at the moment is that defense attorney and the shrink. And by the looks of it, the competent one is the shrink.
symptom severity score.
Yes,
Okay, and you see that there's a maximum of 51, right?
yes.
And the maximum of 51, if somebody is exaggerating their symptoms, they could start to reach 51, couldn't they? They can get as high as 51.
It's possible.
And even if they're not exaggerating their symptoms, it's possible for them to get to 51.
True.
But Jodi was nowhere near 51, right?
According to that sheet you just showed me, no.
Right. And that is specifically, that's not talking about whether or not she meets post-traumatic stress. That's just talking about the severity of it, right?
Correct.
Oh, Madidafin, why was Nurmi disbarred? Mr. Nurmi wrote a tell-all book about Jodi Arias and the trial, and that's not allowed. Now, I heard some conflicting statements that was he disbarred or did he give it up before he wrote the book? I must admit I haven't read in what order he did it. It could be possible he gave the license up to do it, but even if you voluntarily submit your license, you're still not allowed to talk about your experiences with the client and attorney-client privilege. Now, Jodi Arias did sue him, but she lost that lawsuit due to a First Amendment defense from Mr. Nurmi, which I found weird.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because maybe from a civil suit point of view, but the Arizona bar might have had different opinions. I'm not sure.
Well, they do have different opinions, and you know, just because something is, you know, there's a bunch of ethics rules that wouldn't allow for the civil judgment to begin with. But I think it was more of a let's just keep your name out of the presses or something. I don't know. I don't know why people voluntarily release their law licenses. Sometimes I would just fight it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever skipped an opportunity to question a witness. We're talking about the prosecutor.
No.
Little Elf. No, he never has. We're going to get some redirect. It's going to be horrible.
And I think we've established you didn't try and give her this test yourself, right?
Correct.
Yesterday, you talked some about triggering events. You remember that?
Triggering events?
Triggering events?
What specifically are you referring to?
Well, you mentioned triggering events, right?
Related to what?
Well, you mentioned triggering events as relating to that it's something that causes the PTSD.
Yes, so there's a specific event.
Okay. And you used the word triggering, didn't you?
I don't recall if I used that word in particular.
Okay. Well, triggering events really are not related to what causes the PTSD, are they? That's not the proper term, is it?
I don't understand your question. Can you say that a different way?
Sure. When in psychology and in your community, in your scientific community, when people talk about triggering events, aren't they actually talking about events that trigger responses to the trauma, triggering responses to PTSD, right?
So triggering response would be something that's, for example, a reminder of a traumatic event, yes.
And that's
I was going to say, yeah, that might be the thing. Like if you voluntarily surrender your law license, it might be treated differently. I've never had to worry about it, so I've never looked into it. It might be treated differently as if it were, you know, than if it's revoked. So that might be a possibility.
Yeah. Sometimes you can get some kind of. I know in what case was it? It was it's in the. I know this. In Judge De Thomas's came out in defense of a prosecutor who was caught peeking in a tanning salon. That prosecutor was about to be disbarred, but due to a good number of judges told the bar that no, we don't need all of that. He had his license suspended for 90 days as a punishment for being a pervert.
Yeah, I mean,
so you
I
can
don't
have
know.
a
It's all
suspended
weird. It's all
license.
treated weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in one interview, Normie said he got cancer from Jodi Arias.
I'm not sure that's how it works, but I can imagine him saying something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that was back 10, 12, 15 years ago. It was a meme. This trial is giving me cancer. Yeah, it was a meme 10, 15 years ago.
Doing that.
Yeah.
How your community uses the word triggering, right? Your community does not use the word triggering when they're talking about a specific event or events that cause PTSD.
Events, say that again in a different way.
Your community does not use the word triggering event when it's talking about something that is causing the PTSD.
It's possible that people use that terminology.
Okay.
Usually triggering event is thought of as a trigger of something that's happened that's a reminder of the traumatic event.
Right, okay. And you'd agree that when PTSD is diagnosed in somebody, it doesn't have to come from one specific event, does it?
It can come from any events.
Right, and in fact, it can come from either one specific event or it can come from multiple events, can it?
It can come from multiple events.
And so or it can come from the multiple events and then the final event, right? It can come from any one of those. PTSD can be diagnosed from any of those events, right?
Yes.
All right, and so that would be kind of similar to our soldiers who are coming home from the war, right? From different wars. You're aware that soldiers a lot of times are getting diagnosed with PTSD?
Yes.
And sometimes these soldiers who are getting diagnosed with PTSD, they've never actually been physically harmed themselves, have they?
Correct.
And they don't need to be physically harmed themselves to experience PTSD, do they?
Correct.
And in fact, they don't have to specifically discuss one event that they saw in a war that causes their PTSD, right?
They'll discuss many events if they were exposed to many different traumatic events where they felt like their life was in danger or they heard of someone's life being in danger and it elicited that same fear response.
Right. So they can talk about many events and they can still be diagnosed with PTSD.
right? If their symptom presentation is actually associated to those events, yes.
Okay.
You might have really
All right,
gotten
where the
cancer,
Dr.
but
did the
it
MCMI
wasn't
test.
from Jodi. Or is this the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
recent? Is this the earliest that it was discovered that STD that causes cancer in lady parts? Did he get that?
Oh, did they get the HPV virus from Jodi?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
She's
All
got
right,
one
and the
too many
MCMI
buttons.
test, you
She
did
needs to
not
undo one more
give the
button, Jodi
MCMI
does.
test to Jodi, right?
Correct.
And the MCMI test, it basically is a tool to measure long-standing personality traits.
Correct.
It's not measuring a one-time incident, is it?
No.
This is something that you would expect not to change over time.
Right.
And the MCMI test has validity scales, doesn't it?
Yes.
And these validity scales are built into the test.
Yes.
So as a part of taking the test, you can look at these scales and say whether or not a person is answering these test questions truthfully.
Yes.
And in this MCMI test, you reviewed it, haven't you?
Yes.
And you can tell us that there's no issues with the validity with regard to MCMI.
Right. It was within the normal range.
And you looked at the base rate scores, didn't you?
Yes.
And you remember talking about that yesterday?
Yes.
All right, I'm showing you Exhibit 541. This is the MCMI-3 profile, right?
Yes.
Okay. And here we can see some of the scores, right?
Yes.
4chan was
All right,
pure
so
age
here we
back then.
see anxiety, right?
Yes.
And the base rate score of that is 75.
Yes.
And at 75 even, you told us that that's clinically significant, isn't it?
Yes.
So she's elevated in anxiety, right?
Yes.
And then we have the next highest
Elevated because something was
on
done
here.
to her,
We
or
have
something she did.
PTSD, don't we?
Didn't want to get caught by.
Which is the scale at 69, right?
Yes.
And so while that doesn't hit 75, it's an elevated scale, right?
Yes.
It's above normal,
Yes.
and it's far above normal, isn't it?
It's above. Yes. It's still below the clinical significance.
Okay. And yesterday you told us when things are below the clinical significance, you don't just throw that away, do you?
Correct.
So it's still something, a data point, as you would say, that you would consider, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so the two highest scales on the MCMI, right, we have anxiety and PTSD, don't we?
Yes.
But just because something is scored the highest on the sheet doesn't mean it's significant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can have. I'll give you an example. This Inferno sauce has 50% Moruga Scorpion, and the second highest is water. I mean, I still get my mouth burned off by it, even though it has the water plays very little significance. And then the third one is havtorn. I don't know the English word for it, but it's a herb. I don't taste nothing. I don't taste anything of havthorn in this, even though it's third highest, because it's third highest after 50% Scorpion Moruga, 45% water, and then maybe 0.5% of havthorn. I mean, it's stupid. I mean, just say, oh, it scored the highest, second highest. Yeah, but it didn't score high enough. It was just elevated. God.
The other thing, let's look at two more scales, actually. Let's look at desirability. You see desirability, that's another higher score, right? 67. Yes. And desirability is what?
I believe that's a scale to present yourself in a desirable way, overly desirable way.
Okay, so in other words, so she's ranking high in a scale that means that she wants to present herself as desirable in a better way,
yes.
Right? And so when somebody is trying to present themselves in a more desirable or a better way, it might even be possible that the anxiety and the PTSD are being minimized here. right? Because she's trying to make herself look better.
Not in this case, because it didn't reach the threshold.
So you would ignore it then?
It doesn't reach the validity threshold. So at that point, if she had passed over 75, then we would look at it and say it's impacting her scores, but it's not thought to impact her scores at this rate.
Okay, so basically you're throwing it away then?
It doesn't pass the validity. Yeah, it doesn't pass the threshold.
Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
you're throwing it away because it's below 75?
Yes.
All right, even though you just told us that you don't throw data away just because it goes below 75.
Well, those were the other scales that talk about her personality rather than the validity. The goal of the validity scales are to tell us, can we trust the test or not?
Mhm.
That's the goal of it. And it's telling us that we can trust the test.
Okay, so it causes you no concern whatsoever then that she scores very high, elevated, not clinically, but elevated on the desirability, right? That doesn't mean anything to you.
I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. I'm saying that it doesn't cross that threshold that makes me concerned about the validity of the test.
Okay. All right, let's look at one more scale. Let's look at borderline. And we're talking about thresholds so much, and I know we were talking about ones in the 60s, but the borderline personality trait here, we see a base of 11, right?
Yes,
That is far below even normal, isn't it?
that's below.
Far below normal, right?
Below the clinical significance, just like all the rest.
Right, so when we talk about desirability or when we talk about PTSD being below the clinical significance, those are both 60. So they're just a few off of 75, aren't they?
Right, but you're trying to put a value on something by you're making it subjective by talking about it in that manner. The way this maintains this objective test is by using the criteria that's set forth in the manual. So anything below 75 is considered to be not significant.
Okay, so borderline, you'd agree then, is not significant.
Right, on this test, it came up below the significance level.
Not significant,
Not
right?
significant.
Hit
Okay,
All right,
days
you
don't
also,
rein-
let's see, you did the T, oh,
Sorry, what was that?
Hit Dave's like button.
Yes,
Not
and
that
give
button
Nick
on
all
his
the super
channel.
chats.
Yeah, give me all. Well, they don't have much choice, but
I
No.
was gonna say, okay, so from a technical standpoint, don't reinforce the bad testimony that was presented on direct if it's
Yeah.
going to be bad.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I'm not confident in this attorney thus far, listening to this cross examination, that she's going to be able to somehow hit the direct testimony and then rebut it somehow. So all she's
Yeah.
doing is reinforcing the direct testimony.
yeah. And now I assume she's going into, well, borderline also scored lower than the threshold. How can you diagnose her? Well,
Yes.
then she shows another test, because this test they're talking about now is self-reporting, and even by lying,
It's
Jodi
so lower
didn't. Yeah,
or low.
that's why. Okay, now we do the other tests that made me come to this conclusion. That is my prediction about what's coming next.
I was just gonna pull up Mads here and say, I will take all the super chat pledges. You can give the super chats to Nick. You can pledge the super chats to me. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you will get your new channel monetized, and I'm going to bite the dust on that one. But until then, I'm gloating.
I only have 10% of Nick's subs.
Yeah, but you got it really fast.
I did.
and you're aware that the MCMI-3, when it's scored, that comes with a comprehensive report, right?
Yes,
Did you review that as part of your review in this case?
he did not give that to me.
Okay, so you don't have
Dr.
it.
Samuels did not offer that to me.
All right.
So now you again, she wasn't provided that from the defense, but she still tried to attack her about what she wasn't given.
Mhm.
I don't think this is good for the defense. When the jury over and over again are being told, you didn't provide it to me. You didn't provide it to me. Me as a juror, I would think, why didn't the defense want her to have this? That would be my thought.
Judge, may I approach? I'm showing you what the markers of exhibit 625.
Objection, Rule 15 violation.
Approach, please.
What was his objection?
I don't know.
I didn't get a copy or something.
That to me.
Okay, so you don't have
Dr.
it.
Samuels did not offer that to me.
All right. Judge, may I approach? I'm showing you what the markers of exhibit 625.
Objection, Rule 15 violation.
Approach, please.
Rule something violation?
I think it's probably because it wasn't disclosed.
Down to normal speed.
Tammy, I don't go live. Rule 15 violation, non-disclosure. It's like a Brady violation kind of thing in
Yeah.
reverse. Tammy, I officially retired from YouTube back in February. So since then, I only stream like every day of the week. So
Yeah, your
I
retirement
got to stream
went
later
well.
this evening. I got to stream later this evening. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every night.
We're going to
I've
take a
got,
10-minute
or every
recess.
day I've
Please
got
be
live
in the
trials
designated-
and then coverage. I stream more
Yeah.
now than I did before I retired.
Yeah, but you do have a Lego stream later today.
I do. Yep.
Yeah, and
With
you have a
Torrent
prem-
3. This guy is cool, by the way. He's a YouTuber, and he does this weird, intricate Japanese braiding. He's going to come on and build some Legos and talk about that. So
Yeah, and you also have a premiere that starts at 2 p.m. Eastern time.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
I will redirect you to that, so Dave gets a few more hours.
This
Dave
is my
can't
Lego
redirect.
channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't redirect because I'm not monetized, but Nick's got to redirect. So before we end, I'm going to ask that everyone jump over to Nick's stream for this. You'll be redirected to my other Lego Law channel, where I have a premiere of a Lego Law thing. Just give me some watch hours over there too. Give a little thumbs up, tell your friends, that sort of thing. And then tonight on that same channel, I'm going live at 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. rather, with Torin and Valhalla and Wendy and all that. So,
All right.
Area at 10 minutes after 11. Please remember the admonition. You are excused.
Bob Rossa braiding. That's a good way to put it. I'm going to use that tonight.
Yeah.
Torin 3, the Bob Rossa braiding.
And for the YouTubes, this is Vielhammer Media altering and adding his own things to a video. But apparently they don't think it's enough. But so we need to get him to do
But it's not just this. He's literally edited the audio. He's edited the court feed. He's cut out unnecessary stuff. He's made it so we can actually hear them, balance the audio. It's really good. And I don't know why that's not enough. Yeah, Megan was a couple of weeks ago, but I'm restreaming it on my new channel because I'm doing a whole new Lego Law channel. So I'm restreaming it. I've got some of my older streams up, but Megan I'm doing as a premiere to try to get some watch hours in and things like that. So go check it out. Spread the good word.
Approach, please.
Okay. A break and then approach. I think she's drawing.
She's absolutely drawing. We saw her. Yes, look, see, she's erasing stuff. She's brushing it off. She's drawing. I wish that freaking monitor wasn't there and we could see what she's drawing, but I bet she put the pad there on purpose.
Yeah.
She did sell this art. It is out there. Her courtroom trial art. Does she have a oddly placed nipple? Because I feel like something's poking off the side there.
I think that's just her shirt. Or it might be. I don't know.
I don't know, right? I just saw that. It's getting lazy. It's drifting to the side.
No, I can't unsee it. Damn you. Oh, it's DSM-4. She actually has the DSM-4 in front of her.
Oh,
that's
fun.
Thank you, Fedorevsky, who pointed it out. That's it. Well, I think it's in front of the attorney, but still interesting. Yeah, I think that is something under her shirt. Maybe that's the zap thingy.
Oh, she did have that, didn't she?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with my first option, though, because that's more fun.
This is a long...
Her side boob is taking a casual look over at the prosecutor, keeping an eye on
This is a long ass sidebar.
Yeah, it is. It's good. Sidebar is going to take us to the end of the stream.
I'm
Look
skipping
at her just work
ahead.
away.
Skipping ahead. Oh, here we go.
Hi, Dr. DeMarte. We were just finishing up talking about the MCMI, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I have two
And
new
with regard to
channels.
the MCMI that Dr. Samuels conducted, you're aware that there was under Access, well, you talked yesterday about Access 1 and Access 2 diagnoses, right?
Yes.
And under Access 1, according to the MCMI, the diagnosis was none other specified, right?
In addition, there was more access and they were rule outs. They were not diagnoses.
Anxiety disorder, right?
Anxiety disorder, I believe it was NOS,
Right. And what does NOS stand for?
not otherwise specified.
Okay. So in other words, so they're talking, so the diagnosis was anxiety with nothing specific with it, right?
It's anxiety disorder, NOS.
Right. And then for Access 2, that's where we talk about personality disorders, isn't it?
Yes, but you missed the other Access 1 disorder that was listed.
Right, but I'm talking about Access 2 now.
Okay.
Okay, so Access 2 is talking about personality disorders, right?
Yes.
And with Access 2, their diagnosis from the MCMI test comes out as diagnosis or condition deferred, right?
Yes,
That means there is no diagnosis.
that's not correct.
Judge, the same issue in we may approach.
Oh my God. Yes, you take down one of my channels and two more pop up. I multiply that way. If you take down a third, then you get 5. So one might have dollar signs all over it in places of S's, we never know. So but yeah, so if you go to the top of Nick's chat, there's a link to my co-stream of this because we dual stream this right now. And then my other one is Lego Law or
Yeah.
Lego Law.
I will change. I will replace the pinned message to there. That is the Lego where the premiere is in a few minutes.
Yep.
And so if you don't get redirected, you follow that link.
Yeah. You know what? I should probably put that in my chat too.
Yeah. Do that. Do that.
So that way you guys can all go over there.
Since you
It's
can't
starting in a
redirect
minute 45.
Okay.
I can't redirect. So that's fun.
Why is that, Dave?
Because I'm not monetized. All right.
I'm going to get my ass handed to me once you get monetized.
Yes. Look at all these pledges I'm taking in. Assuming they don't Amber Heard me. Nosy Rosie, super douchey people. Yeah. Well, it is what it is, but that's okay. At least I retired from YouTube before it happened. So, and it gave me an opportunity, a good opportunity to bifurcate the Lego stuff. Because that's something that I've been talking about with Valhalla for a while, and now we have the opportunity, and so I'm just bifurcating it.
If one door is closed, go through the window or whatever it's called.
How many watch? I don't even know how many watch hours I have. I need 3,000 on both channels. And I need more subs on my Lego channel, which I probably will get tonight or in the next couple of weeks with the Lego streams that I've been doing.
Oh, you know what? I see that your premiere is ongoing, and this just the sidebar just ended. So, folks, thank you all for showing up. Thank for watching us. There's been a good bunch of you. Thank you for the super chats. Dave, I won, but I didn't get.
You won.
Yeah, but I didn't get. It was a draw, which is a win for you in the gifted memberships.
Yes.
So
thank you, Judith and Q and everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and get over there. Okay, see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.